What's on the agenda today, you might ask? Well, let me go live, and you will see. We're going to talk about how to get houses for free. What's up, gang? Ready to talk about how we get sellers to pay us to buy their houses? It happens. It happens, guys. Let me go ahead and let everybody know here I'm live. Showing you everything I know about free houses live. I guess we should talk about what your guys' goals are. If you guys have background noise, would you mind muting the mic? I think there's Thank you so much. Sorry about that. All right. Just letting everybody know we're live, just in case. Because we have, we got 67 members now. Okay. So, I guess brief rundown because we got some new faces here. Guys, I've got 23 houses. I have never qualified for a mortgage. I don't think I could qualify for a mortgage. I'm not a W-2. I bought my primary residence by taking over somebody else's debt. I bought every investment property I have apart from my fix and flips by taking over other people's debt. The highest interest rate I have is 3.5%. And yeah, I figured out how to get houses for 0% interest seller financing, and I figured out how to get people to pay me to take over their debt. So effectively, if you were renting a property right now, the goal is, well, you're flushing that money down the toilet. It's 25,000 a year, 30,000 a year that just disappears in rental income, and that could be put towards equity to build generational wealth for your family. And the idea is, okay, well, if you rent your entire life, what are you left with? You are left with a lot of money that you've spent on a rental. But if you own your entire life, well, virtually anywhere in the United States in 30 years, that property will be worth $1 million. You're spending this money anyways. You might as well put it towards equity. And then, of course, your tax bill goes down when you own property. You can depreciate the asset. So this community, while it can be about investing, because I've used this strategy for investing, it's largely about, let's shift the money that we are putting into renting right now into owning a primary residence that we live in, and then let's build equity with that so that rather than transferring, no money to our children, we can transfer a fully paid off, free and clear asset worth $1 million. Hell, if you buy this in Denver, Colorado, it's going to be worth more than $1 million. If it's in like a Memphis, Indianapolis, yeah, maybe it'll be worth around there. But the nicer the area, the more expensive the property will be later in life. And it's been a great strategy for me. So there's a ton of different ways to do it. We could talk about assuming the loan, and assuming the loan requires a credit score. And we talk about avoiding the credit score, but in an assumption process, the seller is truly off the loan. And that can be beneficial because now the seller has no reason not to do this. They're not holding the note. And if we do that, the seller will pay us to do that. We could find a seller who has a house listed for 400K, they owe 400K. If they accept an offer at 400K, their options are A, come to the table with $20,000 to pay the realtor, or B, short sale the property and destroy your credit score, which is where you go to the bank and ask if you can sell your property for less than you owe on your mortgage. It's not an ideal situation. So I would say that with the assumption process, you're using credit, and that's a little bit unfortunate. We don't want to do that. But the upside of the assumption process is that sellers will literally give you money to buy their houses. They'll not just pay the closing costs. They will go a step further and say, if you get me out of this scenario, I will give you 5K. I'll give you 10K. So imagine you buy a property and instead of money leaving your account, it goes into your account. And now you're the owner of that house. Some people are that desperate on their payments. And we can talk about it, the exact filters I use to find people like that. Or we can go the different way because I never used my credit to buy these properties. And we can get do a little bit of creative finance and use a subject to deal to buy somebody's properties. So there's a lot of different terms that are floating around here. So I want to stop talking for a second and figure out what our goals are, and then see if we're confused on the processes that we go through to actually afford one of these properties. And oh, look, a member from Hold My Hand Wholesale. I think Valeria, am I saying that right? You're in Hold My Hand Wholesale, I think. So you're already going to be pretty familiar with this. But anyways, I'm going to stop yapping. Feel free to unmute, ask any questions. And if you don't have any questions, I'll just lead you exactly through how we find one of these deals and negotiate it. No, 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 no. I'm gonna sit here for hours on end until this stuff makes endless sense to you guys. I'll even call your leads live. Whatever you want me to do, we'll make it happen. I'm having a little bit of a hard time hearing you. I can, like, hear, like, 70, 80% of it, so I may ask you to repeat a couple things, but, it's, like, echoing a little bit, but go ahead. Well, let me share my screen on this so we can look at the exact portion of the contract because that's a great thing for us to focus on. Can you see my screen? Can you see my screen? Okay, perfect. What so you're looking at 1.5? Yeah, yeah. So, like, if you're looking at a property and they're low equity, like this is a low equity property that we were looking at yesterday. We happened to call the realtor on this yesterday. Let's say that the seller they're asking 184, they owe 156. Let's say I offer them 20K to take over the debt. I would add the 20K to this, and then any realtor commission that the realtor asks on top. You know, it seems like realtor commission, okay, not part of the purchase price, but it's effectively part of the down payment that goes towards the seller. So if they want 20K for me to take over this debt, my purchase price is 176,684, and it's an approximate amount because nobody really knows what is owed on a mortgage until you actually go through title and escrow. We don't have a limited power of attorney that we use. That I mean, we might use that in like a novation agreement, but we never actually have to use a power of attorney for any of this. Um, yeah. So essentially, what we're so there's. Go ahead. My apologies. Yeah. I would say I think this is just a formatting issue because you see how it says like right here, the amount to cure loan defaults, and then it says other and then other. I'm thinking that this is for liens. So essentially, let's say that you were $10,000 behind on payments. That would be amount to cure. That would be the hey, we need to spend X amount in order to get the loan current. The thing is, if it's an FHA or VA loan, we can put that on the back end of the loan. 5 times out of 10, maybe 7 times out of 10, the bank will literally just let us take any amount that the seller owes and put it on the back end of the loan as like a, "Oops, sorry," because they wanna collect their interest at the end of the day. So, my thinking on this right here is this would be like additional things that are owed on the property, like potentially a lien or a solar panel. So, sometimes I have a house in Colorado that I took over, and it's got solar panels on it. So we wrote that right there. Now for agent commission, I delete stuff on this all the time. Like let's say there's no let's say there's nothing here. It actually doesn't have to stay as it looks. I delete portions of this all the time, especially this part right here. You guys won't really be using this because that's for seller financing. So I would just delete that and I would write, let's say $10,000 to the seller. And you could write $15,000 to the seller with 5K of that going to the agent, and you wouldn't even have to write that if that was what the agent expected. Or you could also write $5,000 agent commission right here and just leave it like that. But honestly, one thing that I got really hung up on when I was starting real estate is exactly how the contract looked. And then I learned if you have a seller who wants to sell their house on a napkin, like a literal napkin, purchase price, signature below it, in theory, you could bring that napkin to a title company, and sure, they might revise the napkin a little bit, but it would suffice. And they'd be like, this is a contract of sorts. So, however this makes sense to you to modify, you're welcome to do that. I wouldn't, honestly, and I know how crazy that is. Don't use an attorney. So this contract is actually really, really simple. I'll break it down really quickly. And this is why I don't think you need an attorney. The only inputs we have on this entire page are 1 through 3. The only things that we're going to change. We might do something on page 4 if we had a seller finance. So it says addendums and acknowledgments. We had a seller finance portion right here. That's not part of a mortgage takeover deal unless you're making payments to the seller. So this agreement came from Sean St. Clair. He's a real estate attorney. He put this together. And essentially page 1 through 3 are the only things that we're modifying. And I've highlighted everything in yellow that would be modified in here because I know it looks really scary. But and probably this would be highlighted in yellow too, because you're going to change the date that your deal is closing roughly 30 days. But then the rest of this stuff, if you look closely, this is all state approved contract stuff. This is all stuff that just has to be part of a real estate contract that would be in any real estate contract, like any state approved contract from a realtor. It says septic or alternative wastewater treatment facility. And then below it outlines that you're not allowed to discriminate against people on the basis of whatever it may be. You're like, this is just stuff that you include in a real estate contract. So I would say that all of this stuff is very, very standard, except for page 1 through 3. The rest of it reflects a normal purchase and sale agreement. Now, the seller may ask us to run this through an attorney. I see that happening all the time. And usually I can just yield to whatever the attorney wants us to remove. If there's something in here that they're like, oh, well, I don't like this. And one thing that frequently comes up that they don't like is the memorandum. So I think here it says default by seller. If the seller to breach any terms or provisions, you can sue them for specific performance, which essentially means that if the seller backs out, they are acknowledging that they're breaching the contract and they'll pay for your attorney fees, et cetera, et cetera. So they may ask for something like that to go away, or the affidavit of memorandum, which allows you to essentially put a lien on the property if they breach the contract. But no, I really wouldn't say it needs to go through an attorney because it's pretty simple, although they may want it to go through an attorney. It's insane. Let me show you an actual thread of closing. So if I look up in my email, like a property I purchased, we'll use my 2.5% interest mortgage takeover in Colorado, in Denver. So if I look up Joplin, I might be able to see Gold Key doing everything for me. So I want to see if I can find a thread here because it'll show you exactly what happens. So we see the signed contract here. Maybe we can 2107 North 5th. Maybe we can use a different one than I did in Minneapolis. And I'd love to see the thread of title closing here, because all it is what I'm looking for here, which I can't exactly find. I can see the offer that I made on this property before I closed on it, but I'm looking for a thread, an email thread that is between Gold Key TC and then the title company. And essentially they just do everything. They just do absolutely everything for me, such that I don't know how to set up a trust. I don't know how to work with title in one of these scenarios. I simply hand it off to Gold Key TC. And this is a company that I own, but I'm not the person who runs the actual operations of the company. My partner Lexi does. And they just work with the title company or the closing attorney to close one of these deals. And I think we can do it in 48 states or 50 states for a loan assumption. So yeah, I honestly, I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to close one of these deals. I get the contract signed, I hand it off to them, they do their stuff, and the title gets transferred into my name, and it just happens like that. It's kind of miraculous. Um, so are you saying if I use my own contract, is there any difference in working with Gold Key? Oh, yeah, yeah. Same process, same process. So, that's such a great question. I did that about 3 weeks ago. I had one of these houses in Arizona for $0 down. I got the seller to agree to that offer, and, I didn't want the deal, so I wholesaled it to somebody who did want the deal, and they gave me $7,000. The exact same process happened. I submitted to Gold Key this time with an assignment agreement, or I could simply submit it to Gold Key, hop on the phone with them and be like, "Hey, I intend to assign this. Can you do the assignment for me?" Because they're really the transaction coordinators. They can honestly, if you called them and you said, "Hey, I have a seller who's ready to sign," they would even go as far as doing the purchase and sale agreement for you to get that closed. And then the seller ultimately should pay for the transaction coordination service. Well, I think it's just those things are great. Now, one thing you said that caught my attention is I would lean into, because we always see the seller who needs the new house. I have 2 resources for you. The first is a mortgage broker who can help somebody qualify for a new mortgage after they sell their property like this. So when you sell your property, via trust acquisition agreement or via subject to deal, um, the thing is, loan underwriters may not all look at your credit score the exact same way because technically the mortgage is still in your name. But some of them are well versed on the trust acquisition agreement and the subject to deal, and they understand exactly what happened, and they can actually offset that debt on their credit score and get them a new loan. Now, I have a nationwide mortgage broker through Guild Mortgage, which is a huge loan brokering company. And I'm going to go ahead and give you all his contact information. And he's one of the nicest, most responsive people in the business I have ever worked with. His name is Andrew. I unfortunately don't know his last name, but I'm going to drop his phone number in the chat right here. You can say, "Hey, Richard sent me. He said that you can help sellers get new loans." And the thing is, you don't have to worry about leaning on him because he gets a origination fee every single time he gets a seller a new loan. So this is actually part of his business, getting sellers new loans after selling with Creative Finance. Andrew, nationwide mortgage broker. Here he is. And you can refer sellers to that individual to get new loans after they've sold their property, with Creative Finance. And the thing is, he's not helping them get a loan subject to the existing mortgage or with the trust acquisition agreement. He's going through the normal processes that you would actually have to go through to qualify for it. He just underwrites your DTI and says, I recognize this sale. I recognize what's happened. And this is a massive resource. And then the other thing I'll say is, lining up 2 subject to deals is going to be hard. Usually you're going to be making 20, 30, 40 calls, to get somebody to agree to hold the mortgage. So if you're talking to your seller and you're like, "Hey, well, I can get you another property," you're doubling your work. Rather, what I would say is, I can get you a house for $0 down. Have them jump through the qualification hoops. Have them jump through the actual assumption process. So perhaps if you're in Corpus Christi and you want to purchase this person's property subject to the existing mortgage, great, do that. But then the next deal that you line up for them, have it be an assumption so that you don't have to do all of the explaining over again to a new seller and have a new conversation with a new attorney and make all of this stuff happen. Because the seller, in their perspective, they're expecting to spend money to buy a house. If you can just do them the service of getting them into a property that may go on their credit score, but is truly $0 down, they're going to be really happy with that scenario too, because most people didn't even know that you could assume a loan for $0 down or get paid to assume a loan. Yeah, this is great. So essentially, um, there are two types of loans that can be assumed in most cases. These are government-backed loans. So we probably see four types of common loans. We see conventional, new conventional, FHA, and VA, and there's a couple other types of loans, but those are the four most common loans that we see. Only two of these loans are government backed. Government backed meaning that if they default, I think the government would come and pay it or something like that. I don't really know. Maybe it comes from funds from the Federal Reserve, whatever it may be. But government backed loans are FHA loans and VA loans. And you can assume a VA. I actually have like 7 VA loans. I own a shit ton of VA loans. I'm not a veteran. I've you don't have to be a veteran to assume a loan. And I didn't even assume these loans. I used the trust acquisition agreement strategy to buy them. But you don't have to be a veteran to assume one of these loans, and you also don't have to be a first-time home buyer to assume an FHA loan. The rule is that well, there's actually no rule. I was going to say the seller has to live there for 1 year first, but that's more so on the seller and their taxes for the deal. If they live there for a year or 2 years, they don't have to pay capital gains taxes on the sale, which is a pretty convenient thing about that. But for FHA and VA loans, if you're actually jumping through the assumption process, it's going to be similar to like a credit approval process. They're going to check your credit score. They're going to check your debt to income ratio. The interest rate is probably going to stay the same, which is still really cool. You know, it could go up, but chances are it'll stay the same. And if you go on Zillow, you can actually, I mean, check this out. So let's just say Houston, Texas. I also am a seller of some low equity houses. So if you guys need one in San Antonio or Houston, I'll give you one of my houses. Like literally, just give it to you. But if I looked up assumable on, oh, am I sharing my screen? Uh-oh. I don't think I am. I'm so sorry. Here we go. Let's go on Zillow. Check this out. It's staggering how needed this strategy is. I just revealed every low equity house in Texas. So all I did, and I'm sorry, in Houston, all I did is I looked up assumable in the keywords. Every single dot you see here, which is 200 dots, are saying that they're low equity. Check this out. So here's a beautiful property. Look at this. Let's see if it says assumable in the description. So assumable, yes. Check to see if you qualify. So they want you to go through the qualification process, but what they're saying, and you could also convert these people to creative finance. So you could just find these people and be like, hey, I can't assume the loan because I have too many mortgages. That's a fake excuse, by the way. But what we could do is we could do creative finance. Now I can see that this person has an asking price of 330 and is asking 251. So are they going to let us assume it for $0 down? Yeah, probably not. They probably need that 80K or at least maybe like 40K or something. So we can probably do better than that. But the assumption process, you go through an actual credit check, but look at all the people who need it. So what you want to do is just go through these individuals. You don't even have to pitch creative finance. I would just pitch the $0 down offer, have the seller take care of the realtor and potentially closing costs for your new client. And we're ultimately looking for that extremely low equity one. So this is interesting. This guy is in pre-foreclosure, notice of trustee sale. So this guy's not low equity, but you could actually eat all of the equity that he has because the bank is going to take the house. You can see that it failed at $203,000. And I can see that the type of loan that they have is an FHA loan. This is a huge opportunity. The reason why this is a huge opportunity is because an FHA loan is a government-sponsored loan, meaning that all of the back money that they owe that's resulting in this pre-foreclosure status can be put on the back end of their loan through what's called a loan modification. So oftentimes I'll run into a seller who's like, I haven't paid my mortgage in 2 months or 5 months. Because remember, a foreclosure takes 10 months to happen. If you don't pay your mortgage for 10 months, they might take the house, right? But if you don't pay your mortgage for 5 months, you'll just be in pre-foreclosure. So a lot of the time we'll run into a seller who's low equity and pre-foreclosure. This is an extreme motivation for that seller. They literally are going to lose the house if they don't figure something out, and holding the mortgage in their name is a much, much better scenario for them and will actually fix their credit as you continue to make on-time payments while they hold the mortgage in their name. So I could call this person and here's what I'd say. Hey, I see that you have an asking price of $200,000 on your property right here. And I see that you owe about 169,000 and you haven't made mortgage payments in say 4 or 5 months, right? Will you call your bank for me and ask to put those mortgage payments on the back end so I can take over your debt? The bank will say yes, I would say 70% of the time if it's an FHA or VA. It's very common for them to say yes, more likely than not that they'll say yes. They'll put all of the money on the back end of the loan, and then you can take over that debt for $0 down with a slightly increased principal than before, principal meaning the amount that you owe. So what I'm trying to say is if you're creating a full service scenario for a seller where you're helping them out in every way possible. You're subject toing their house and then lining them up with a second house. I wouldn't line them up with a second property the way you're buying their property, although you could. It just is a little bit of extra work. Rather, I would wholesale them an assumable loan. You could wholesale them an assumable loan, get yourself $5,000 like that, and they'll pay that in cash. And now you're literally getting paid to find them their next property, and they don't have to go through the subject to process, which requires lots of explaining. And I think that even if they're behind on their payments, they're definitely willing to do this because it's much better than losing the house to the bank, having a foreclosure on your record, not being bankable in the future. And then beyond that, you probably won't have to spend any money because a loan modification, which is as simple as asking your seller to do the loan mod, is more likely than not in having all the money put on the back end. Yeah. Yeah, sure. For sure. So, this is my house in Tuscaloosa. This is my little McMansion in Tuscaloosa. It's a rental property of mine. VA seller. And here's the rule with entitlement. I don't know if we have any veterans in the chat, but they'll let you know if we do. Essentially, when you're a veteran and you serve in a certain area of the United States, you are given an allotment of money that you can spend on these $0 down loans. Because veterans, the benefit for serving, or at least one of the benefits of serving, is that the government sponsors a loan for you after the GI Bill that literally just gives you free houses for $0 down. And that's really, really awesome for them. It's probably the best type of loan you could possibly get. Your interest rate is going to be lower than any other loan's interest rate, including FHA, and your down payment will be lower than any other loan. And in fact, sometimes fully zero. So a big deal for a veteran is what's called their entitlement. And the important thing to know about entitlement is that you get $765,000 on average of entitlement across the United States, right? So the average is like, well, if you're in Ohio, your entitlement may only be $300,000 because houses in Ohio or probably not 300, probably 500 or 600. But if you're in San Diego, perhaps your entitlement, because San Diego, massive military base, right? Perhaps your entitlement is $1.5 million because that's just what houses cost over there. And that's what a condo is going to cost you to live over there. And so many people do live over there as veterans and they still need to get houses. So if you sell your property subject to the existing mortgage, you don't get your entitlement back. You don't get it back. There's no two ways around it. There's no easy way to explain that. The good news is you probably have enough entitlement to get a second VA loan. And that's why I have this property pulled up. This seller right here had enough entitlement to get a second VA loan, and they intended to live in that next house before likely being restationed for about 8 years. So what I did is I put an 8-year balloon on this property saying that I would sell the property in 8 years to get them their entitlement back. But the thing to note is, even if this doesn't return your entitlement to you, look into your total entitlement because chances are you could buy one, if not two more properties with the allotment of entitlement that you already have. And then, of course, they could also still use their FHA loan. That's an average. That's an average knowing that in New York City, your entitlement is probably I don't know if there's a base in New York City, probably not, but, in San Diego, your entitlement could be as much as $1.5 million, whereas in Ohio, perhaps your entitlement is only 500,000 because that's just what the houses cost over there. Yeah, these are such great questions that I had completely forgot to address. These are all so, so important, but, at the root of it, guys, I would say that you just need to be able to identify the person who needs this solution, and then you'll learn the stipulations that you run into. I had one of the easiest conversations ever, and remember, this is also a great way to make money. This is a really, really good way to make money. Check this out. So I got this deal this week when I was doing my cold calls. Let's see if I can find it. It's this realtor's other listing. Mm, maybe I didn't write it down, but this realtor has another listing. If I look up her name is Sheena. We got one of her houses in Detroit. She probably only has 3 listings or so, and you can always find their other listings by looking up their name. So I could go here and I could look up her name and find her other listings, but let's see, Detroit. She has a property in Detroit that's listed for sale, very similar to one of the ones that we just looked at, and they owe pretty much what the house is worth. We offer them $14,000 down to take over the debt, but none of us want to go live in Detroit, so we're going to wholesale that for another $7,000 to somebody else just to take over the debt that's on the mortgage. And the seller had no objections with it, was ready to go, and they're signing the contract like by Monday. They're just talking it over with their wife, and they're totally good to go. So sometimes the seller's already aware of the method because the realtor has prepped them on it and said, hey, this, by the way, this is something that you could do. And the interesting thing is, check this out. If you go to HUD 1, HUD 1 is the closing statement prepared by the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development. On line 203, do you see what that says? It says existing loans taken subject to. Again, on line 503, existing loans taken subject to. Who made this document? Well, if you look closely on the seal, it says United States Department of Housing and Urban Development. So the United States government acknowledges subject to as a valid way to sell your property. So sometimes realtors like this realtor, who's an amazing realtor, will prep their sellers on deals like this where we could get it for $14,000 down, which is not something that I want to buy. It's in Detroit. I don't love owning rentals in Detroit, but other people do love owning rentals in Detroit. So you may come across one of these scenarios and say, you know what? This mortgage is only $900 a month and the property rents for 2,600 and I can get it for 14K down when otherwise an investor would have to spend 40K to buy this. So it might make sense for them to give me $10,000 in cash just to take over the debt on the property. So this is not only a way to move into a primary residence, you could also use this strategy if you're doing wholesaling to make yourself extra income. I close 2 to 3 of these per month in wholesale deals. Anywhere from Detroit to Phoenix to Florida to Texas to Oregon, where my primary residence is. And it's also a really, really good way to make money on the side. But yeah, anyways, do we want to? I think we should. I think are there any other questions that we have in the audience right now? Hey, how you doing? You're from Hold My Hand Wholesale, right? Yeah, very close. How's it going? Yeah, yeah. So let's say you have a seller who's asking $100,000, and I use 100 as an example because generally speaking, these investors they don't love to buy the more expensive ones because they don't cash flow very much. Guys, as you go up to like 300 and $400,000, these houses that are low equity, the mortgages exceed what the house rents out for. And it's like, well, it's hard to find an investor to buy that unless super low interest rate or $0 down house in a really good area and you have a very specific type of investor who wants to buy it. So I'll use 100K as an example, but let's say they owe 100K, they're $10,000 behind on their mortgage. What do we do? Well, you got 2 options. Let's say it's a non-government sponsored loan. You could offer them 10K down on a 100K house to pay back their arrears. and they could just pay for the agent, and then the buyer could pay for the closing costs. So if it's non-government sponsored loan and they can't put all of that money on the back end of their loan, okay, sometimes we catch up arrears with the down payment. If it is a government sponsored loan, almost certainly a portion of that, if not all of that money, can be put on the back end of their loan and have their loan reinstated. I'm running into the seller who has 10K in back payments. They really need to get out of it because the house is going to be taken by the bank. Non-government sponsored, great. Let me see if I can catch up your payments if it would allow for it. Government sponsored loan, FHA or VA loan, hey, can you call your bank and ask if you can put this money on the back end? And then I can truly get the house for $0 down. Oh, sure. If he owes 10,000 and you want a 5K assignment fee, $15,000 is the entry fee for the buyer. If he owes 10,000 and they put the 10,000 on the back end, 5K is the assignment, which it would, let's say 10K is the assignment because now you've just widened your margins. Now they could probably enter the deal for 15K, but you could get a 10 or $15,000 assignment fee if they put the 10 on the back end. So your assignment fee is just either we call these arrears plus the assignment fee, so 15K entry, or arrears are put on the back end of the loan. They're no longer due on sale, meaning like due up front to close the deal. And then you have a $5,000 assignment fee or a 10K assignment fee, and it's just 10K down to enter the deal. Ooh, yeah. So now we're talking about the investing side of things. So if you want, so I bought a mortgage takeover that needs rehab. If you go on my Instagram right now and you look at my PDX house slide, you'll see that this entire thing was like gutted. It was in really rough shape, but I loved the house. I wanted to renovate it. So I took over the debt on the property and I did some renovation. But would an investor do that? Probably not. And the reason an investor I honestly only use this strategy for houses that are near turnkey condition or somebody wants to live in it and is willing to do a little bit of rehab. And the reason is because of what hard money loans can do and what private money can do. Whenever I'm buying a distressed property like a fix and flip, I just acquired this thing. Let me show you guys. I just acquired this property, 16176 Tracy Street. This is my most recent fix and flip, and the seller actually did have a mortgage on it, so I could have taken over their debt. But even if the seller paid me to take over their debt on this property, I wouldn't have done it. And the reason I wouldn't have done it is because the alternative is my lender paid for the entire purchase price, an entire renovation budget, and closing costs with no monthly payments in the hard money loan or the private money loan. So the type of loan that is available for investors when you're buying a distressed property is honestly better than any mortgage takeover you could get. What it is 100% financing for purchase, 100% financing for rehab, and no monthly payments. So I literally got wired $55,000 to renovate this property. I close on it and they're like, here's 55K. And I'm like, well, that's great. And if I had just renovated if I had just taken over the mortgage, well, now I have to come up with that 55K, which is a massive headache. So I honestly wouldn't ever use this strategy on a distressed property, although you could use it on a distressed property because an investor's thinking, well, what's my opportunity cost? If I buy your mortgage takeover, I can't use my hard money loan to cover purchase price and rehab. So I'd say the only scenario is if you are willing to do some renovation yourself to live in the property, yeah, sure, get it done. Yeah, Fra- Franklin, Ohio, right? Oh gosh, I'm so new to this platform. I guess you click the little comment button on the bottom maybe. And then guys, another way to get a free house that I didn't even think about is what I just talked about. Um, Technically that's a free house, right? The property I just purchased, if you have a private money lender, which private money is kind of relationship based and it's kind of hard to find, but it does exist. Hard money is the first step, and hard money is usually 10% down. So probably about $15,000 down is what you'd have to do for a first hard money loan. But if you ever find a private money lender, guys, you could get them to pay the entire purchase price and the entire renovation. You renovate the property, and then because a hard money loan or private money loan is only a 6 to 12 month loan, you refinance that out. So the way that this particular deal looks, guys, is I acquired it for 70K. It was listed for 90. I offered 70. I went ahead and I got that $55,000 rehab budget. So now my all in the deal is about 135K. The house, when it's done, 190,000, $200,000 price. So I could go to the bank and say, "Yo, I got this 190K fully renovated house and I owe 135 on it. What can you give me?" And they would say, I can, if you live in the property, I could give you 90% of the value on a mortgage, and the bank would quite literally pay you like 30K, and then you could pay the rest of that off over the next 30 years. Or if it's an investment property, the bank will only leverage you up to 75%. So if the house is worth 200K, they could only give you 150K against the property, but you only owe $135,000 on it. So that refinance would still cover your hard money loan. So I guess one final way to get a house for $0 down would be what's called a BRRRR, BRRRR, which is a OG real estate investing strategy, been done for a very long time, where you buy, you renovate, you refinance, and repeat. And it's cool because if you have a good hard money lender, you can buy these houses for $0 down. And in theory, this would also work for a primary residence if you wanted to do that. But what's your address? Oh, you put it in the chat? Not quite yet. Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. You can tell me. Let's see if I can find. I'm not finding it. 110 or found it. Okay, duplex. Where is so are we looking to do a wholesale, primary residence, fix and flip? What's the game plan on this? Sure. Okay. So well, I guess the thing to think about is that that investor's opportunity cost. If you're buying this thing subject to the existing mortgage, you still have to bring the rehab money to the table. So I wouldn't use subject to as a distressed property strategy. I would probably use for distressed properties um, cash offers, because a cash offer really can be acquired with a hard money loan. So I think you'd be hard pressed to find somebody who wanted to buy subject to and then renovate. However, this one's not terrible. It's actually kind of cool. It's got all this super historic stuff in it. So, it's not the worst condition in the world, and perhaps somebody's okay laying new carpet, and perhaps somebody's okay with this style of living room. I mean, honestly, it's pretty cool. I Maybe an investor would be okay with that. I really can't speak for all investors. The only thing I will say is I haven't heard of Franklin, Ohio. Maybe it's a decently populated area, but the first thing to know as to whether or not we could assign a deal is population. Population is huge. So this looks like it's part of this kind of larger Dayton area. So that should be fine. Yeah, and it's right between Dayton and Cincinnati. Yeah, sorry, I used the term cash offer kind of improperly. When I refer to a cash offer, I'm meaning anything that's not creative finance, not necessarily acquired in cash. Because we're so creative finance forward with what I do, I say cash offer, but really what I mean is just not using creative finance. So for example, let's say that let's say that this property has an after repair value of $200,000. You might want to acquire this for $70,000 or $80,000, because you could pay that 80 and then you could get a loan that not only covers the 80 but also covers the rehab necessary for the property. So the cash offer allows you to get a loan, which doesn't make it a cash offer, but the offer that the buyer would get a loan with might be more desirable than a subject to offer, because subject to, you don't get the rehab money with it. It also looks like a credit line. So it might be the type of mortgage we don't want to take over. So, yeah, credit line, technically, a seller could tap into that after the sale. They could keep taking money out of it because it just looks like the line is in place, and they're not gonna check to see if ownership is transferred. So we don't I wouldn't wanna take over a credit line because it could get called due on sale, meaning that you have to pay it all up front. And then the seller could kind of tap into it. And then also, credit lines have really bad adjustable rate terms. So I bet that the credit line's not at this rate. Credit lines are often at like 9 or 10% interest, and the rate moves frequently with the Federal Reserve. So as the Federal Reserve goes up and down, that rate could go up and down as well. So I wouldn't want to take over a credit line. I think the strategy on this one is definitely the cash offer. And if the seller's like, well, I'm not going to take a cash offer. Okay, say goodbye to your property, bro. That's going away. You don't get to own this for much longer knowing that you have $37,000 in back payments. Yeah, so the really weird thing happens when you get into this business. You call a seller and you're like, "Hey, so bank's gonna take your house in a month." And they're like, "No, no, come and try me. Come and try me." And I'm like, "Bro, you don't seem to understand. The sheriff was going to come to your door and remove you if you don't leave." Like, so a lot of people, they kinda dig their head in the sand when this is happening, which is why I bring up the assumption as a really awesome strategy. Because if they're not willing to do the subject to, and if they're not willing to do the cash offer because 'cause they're gonna have to bring money to the table, and you really wanna live in that property, it might be worth it to go through the assumption hurdles knowing that you could still get that thing for $0 down. Hold on, this person's calling me. Let me tell them I'm on the other line. Yeah. Right, right, right. How would I assign this deal? It would have to be a cash offer. It would have to be a cash offer, because I think that it's going to be challenging to get somebody to take over the debt in this scenario. But, that's simply a condition thing and an investment strategy thing. Somebody else may see it differently. Somebody else may have money that they need to pour into this property, for tax purposes, and maybe they're okay doing a renovation. But from my perspective, it would be silly to buy a distressed property subject to when you can get the rehab budget paid for. So I'm thinking that the cash offer is a more applicable strategy for this, but I could be totally wrong about that. And I think that perhaps somebody's okay with this condition, because of the convenience of a mortgage takeover deal. So yeah, you could offer that. My only thought process is, well, they might like a cash offer a little bit more, but then the issue that we run into with the cash offer on this property is that, well, we have to think about kind of the chain of what's going to happen when somebody buys this property. So this is a duplex in Franklin, Ohio, and who are they flipping the duplex to? A retail buyer or somebody who is going to invest in the property? Probably somebody who's going to invest because duplexes are usually purchased by investors. Now, what causes an investor to buy a duplex is their cash on cash return. The problem is, if this guy wants 110,000 or even $80,000, the amount to renovate the property and then what you would need to sell it for, probably like 170, 180. The problem with 170 and 180,000 as a price for this, well, check it out. If somebody buys this property for 180,000, they need a 20% or 170, they need a 20% cash on cash return. This property will probably rent for 1,100 to 1,200 per side, $2,400 total. The problem with that is the monthly payments on this are probably going to be 1,300, and if they're bringing in $2,400, we take off 20% for expenses, we subtract the 1,300, and now you're only making 600 bucks per month or 7,000 per year, but your total cost of buying the property was 44,000, 10K for closing costs. So your cash on cash return here at the numbers that they have this priced at would only be 16%, and people pull the trigger on renovated properties like this at 20%. So it's kind of interesting if they actually are asking this price. Flipping a duplex is not just about the comps. Flipping a duplex is about the cash on cash return because investors, all they're thinking about is when I'm buying this renovated property, because it probably will go to an investor because it's an investment property as a duplex, right? What's my money out? What's my money in? And I want that to be 20%. I want to get 20% of my down payment back on year one if I'm to pull the trigger on this deal. So the price that they're asking, didn't they say it wouldn't take less than 80K? Might be a little bit hard for your buyer to renovate for a profit with your fee and then sell for the right price. But you could also find a buyer who doesn't really know what I just told you, who pulls the trigger on it. Probably shouldn't. So I guess long story short, hard for a cash offer because of the numbers that they're asking and the renovation needed, and then hard for a subject to offer knowing that it needs rehab. But maybe somebody's okay bringing the rehab money to the table. Maybe they just like the historic aspect of the house. I mean, the roof looks new. Yeah, I think that if we're looking in like the Dayton area, that's a really great place to do it. Guys, for wholesaling opportunities like this, what I'm doing is I'm gonna go ahead and put in a price, say, cash flow is important to me. So I'm gonna put in 140, reluctantly $140,000 max price, ideally less than that. But I'm looking for a low equity property in this price range. It could be a single family. If it's a single family, I probably want it to be 90K max price. And the reason I say that is because single families above 90K barely cash flow. Kind of 90 to 100K is the max cash flow price for a single family property, and this is only for if you're wholesaling. So if you're doing this to live in a property, guys, fully disregard. But if you're doing this for wholesale purposes, think about it this way: single families 90K or less for investors to be interested. So I just did this one on Covert. I think we took over the mortgage of 47K for 4K down. I was able to get myself a 5K fee. The reason they like that is because the payment is 650 and the rent is 1200. If this property were 90K, the payment is all of a sudden 800 and the rent is 1200. And then it's like, well, wait a second, 20% off the top of my 1200 rent for expenses kind of only leaves me with $100. So if we're wholesaling, I'm putting in a filter into PropStream for $90,000 maximum for single family. But if I'm willing to look at duplexes, perhaps my max price is 150,000, but now I'm just going to filter out my single families knowing that they're not actually going to cash flow. So the filters that I just put in, guys, were this. We're looking at on-market properties. We're going to go to max equity percentage. I'm going to say 30%. I'm going to say 30% here. And there's 12 of these properties that are duplexes. Now, actually, almost all of them are for rent. So you can kind of see right here, these properties, see how they say 1,100? It's not that it's actually 1,100. It's that they're asking rent. So this person is kind of thinking to themselves, well, wait a second. I acknowledge that I'm low equity. I know I'm not going to make any money on the sale, so let's rent it instead. So we might want to filter out the rentals by putting in a price filter. So I'm going to go to value and equity, and I'm going to do, well, actually, no, I'm going to go to MLS details, and I'm going to do minimum listing amount, $4,000. And that will get rid of any rental properties. So now we are purely looking at low equity duplexes. So check this out. And by the way, guys, we can offer down payments to low equity duplexes. This guy's asking 120, but you see how many days it's been, 245? Well, it's actually worth about 109. It's not really worth 120. He's asking that because he needs it, because he knows that if he accepts 109 for this and pays 6% of 109, well, he's really only walking away with about 5K. So this is somebody we could go to and say, I'll give you 15K to take over the debt. And the reason we could give him 15K to take over the debt is, check this out. His mortgage costs $600, and this is a damn duplex, meaning that as a 3-bed, 2-bath duplex, one side of this is going to rent for about 1,100 as the 2-1, and one side about 900. So this could bring in 2,000 with a total PITI, which means monthly payment, guys, of probably only $850 to $900. So it's a cash cow. And the reason that an investor would jump on a deal like this is, how much does it cost to buy it normally? Well, we just ran that scenario at 170, 20% down, 10K for closing costs. So an investor is normally looking at this and saying, I have to put down 24,000 plus 10K in closing costs. That's 34K. And I have to show them all of my income statements to qualify. If you offered them 10 or 15K down, they dodge the qualification process and they can enter the deal for less and sometimes take over an interest rate that no longer exists. That's exactly what I did on my fourplex in Minneapolis. And I paid a 19-year-old kid $7,000 for finding it for me. So I think that guys, this goes two ways. You could do this for a wholesaling strategy where you're literally just collecting checks like this. Like, guys, half of these checks that you see right here, these are literally just wholesale checks. I'm probably holding $300,000 in assignment fees right now. There are individual checks in here for $40,000. I remember one day I collected 2 of them, guys, for $110,000. So you could collect assignment fees with this strategy, even if they're more expensive properties, right? Because I just did this with 5082 East Diatomite in Santan Valley, Arizona, Phoenix, Arizona. And the reason it's for rent right now, I wholesaled it. It's a more expensive property. It doesn't cash flow and it has a high interest rate. But because it's in the Phoenix metro area, some investor was like, you know what? I would take a $0 down house. So I charged him 7K and he gave it to me. So it's cool, guys, because if you find something and you're like, you know what, I don't really want to buy this. you could probably wholesale it if it's the right deal, even if it's not a cheap property. But if your sole intention is to wholesale mortgage takeovers, go cheap. Go cheap. Because it's harder to find an investor who's willing to buy a high interest rate, non-cash flowing property. You usually have to have kind of a specific buyer. But if you do run into one of those scenarios, come to me. I might have somebody off the top of my head who could do this. But then another thing I'll tell you guys, you could wholesale to each other. So let's say one of you guys is looking for a deal in Houston, Texas, and another one of you guys is looking for a deal maybe in Phoenix, Arizona. The person in Phoenix finds the one in Houston before you find the one in Houston. Great. I did that the other year. I did that on a property in Cyprus. I had this house in Cyprus, Texas that I didn't own. I got the seller to agree to $0 down, and there was somebody in my Discord named Alma who was looking for one of these deals for her parents. So I gave her my contract for $5K down, and she sent me $5,000 for a house that her parents wanted to live in. So you can also wholesale these to retail buyers in certain scenarios. Cool stuff. Anyways, I think it might be valuable to talk about how to find these in your various markets and how to talk to these people. Do you guys want to go through the filters that I use on PropStream, and we can start looking for some houses wherever you guys live? I even did this in San Diego. I got a condo in San Diego that's $500,000, and we got them to agree to $0 down. So even if you live in like Southern California or somewhere where the real estate's really, really desirable, you could still do this. You could do this in New York City. You could do it in Los Angeles. The higher the price point of the houses, the more likely you are to have to spend a little bit of money. I personally put $65K down on my low equity house. The reason that I did that on this property is because I was obsessed with it. I mean, it was such a cool looking property. I just couldn't get over it. So, yeah. If you guys want to run through it, I can talk to you about how to find these deals. All right, let's run it. So this is how I find them. These are the filters I use. Does anybody want to look for a deal in their market? Does anybody have a specific area they're looking? Okay, cool. I'd heavily recommend a condo in Los Angeles because your single families in Los Angeles, I mean, $1.5 million barely gets you something. And then now you have a realtor commission to pay for, and that realtor commission might be $40,000 just for posting photos on Zillow. So okay, yeah, let's see if we can find it right now. If it's a little bit outside, that helps. And I'm glad that you're wholesaling it because you probably will. Hopefully, his threshold is such that you could spend a little bit of money. Or that he could spend a little bit of money. Do you know? Okay. Do you know what his max down payment is? Great. Let's look for it. Okay. So I am going to reset all of my filters, clear filters, Joshua Tree. We're going to go active status and on market. So these are active on market properties. Here's one. I didn't even put in my filter. It just already popped up. So I didn't realize Joshua Tree was so much less expensive than LA. I had no idea. Okay, here's a property. It's not a very nice property, but it is a property. I mean, it's not actually. I mean, shit, that's a nice renovation. He owes, this guy's so deep underwater. He owes he would pay you to take over the debt here. So if your guy is open to an assumption, you don't have to convince anybody to assume their loan. Every single seller everywhere who is in this scenario guaranteed is open to an assumption because there's no downside. There's only upside to the seller. So I would first ask your buyer if he's okay for an assumption, because you could line up an assumption contract and still get paid on that if they're open to it. But let's check it out. Let's see if they're still active on Zillow. Yeah, they are. They are active on Zillow, and they're doing price cuts of 25K to illustrate strong motivation. One thing to note about a price cut, guys, is that a price cut will often reset the days on market. So I know it says 26 days on market, but let's check to see if that's really the case. listed for sale. Oh, yeah. So it is really the case that it's only been 26 days. They listed this thing for sale on the 20th of July. But yeah, he's deep underwater, guys. He's deep, deep, deep underwater, and he's motivated to let this thing go. So it's an absolute given that they'd let you assume the loan if it's a government-sponsored loan, which it's not, unfortunately. So you could call him and say, hey, I'd love to assume the loan. And the realtor is going to say, unfortunately, this loan is not assumable. And you're like, well, wait a second. I could just take over the debt using a trust acquisition agreement. He could just add me to the entity that owns the property and I could take over the debt that way. Or, I mean, of course, he could bring $50,000 to the closing table to sell his property. I mean, it's up to you guys. What would you rather do? Have somebody take over your debt or bring 50K to the closing table? I say 50K, guys, because look, $399 is his asking price, but he owes $431. He's got to pay the $431 and the realtor. But you know what? He's decided not to. He's opting for the short sale. And if he's opting for the short sale, well, his credit is really, 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 really hurting right now. And I think this would be a good opportunity to call. Sometimes when the bank has their mind set on short selling the property, I don't want to approach a short sale because sometimes the bank can get mad about that. So I would, the only thing I'd caution you guys on is if you see the short sale filter here, they've already confirmed with the bank that they're okay to sell the property below the mortgage. And the bank is thinking to themselves, I don't really care about selling the property below the mortgage. Here's why. They've already got their money back through the seller's down payment and the interest they've collected. So the bank, while they're maybe only collecting $380,000 and they technically have lended $431 on it, well, this guy's been making interest payments on the $431, so they've probably collected the money that they need, and he probably came to the table with a down payment of 10 to 15 to 20%. So the bank doesn't really care that they're short selling the property. They're like, all right, cost of doing business. But what they do care about is their ability to reclaim the 431 and then lend that out at a higher rate. So sometimes, guys, when I see this tab, short sale, I let them be. It's better if the person is listed for like, say 45,000. Well, let's see. This is better right here. This would not, well, maybe it is. This one says short sale too, but don't necessarily say, don't think that it always is a short sale if it says short sale. This is just a software that's guessing. So this guy right here, he may not be short selling his property. He's asking for 320. He owes 309. So technically there's a little bit of equity in here and he may not be short selling the property. Let's check it out. I can also see he's in heavy motivation right now, pre-foreclosure. So this guy definitely needs to get this thing off his books or he's going to lose the property. So you know what kind of house he's looking for? Is he looking for a mansion? Is he looking for a small property? What's he looking for? Condos everywhere in LA like that. So LA people have this inflated ego about their property value, right? It's in Los Angeles. It's definitely appreciated over time. Maybe it hasn't, but you have a seller who bought a property in Los Angeles a year ago. They behave differently than a seller in Houston who bought a house a year ago. Like I've owned this house in Houston. One of my houses in Houston I've owned for 2 years. It legitimately has not gone up in value in 2 years. And I know that. But if I'm in LA and I bought it and I owned it for a year, I'm like, oh yeah, it's up 100K, 200,000 from now. And they have that ego associated with them that you don't have in normal markets in the United States. But this Joshua Tree market does not appear to be playing by the same rules. Look at this beautiful property I just found. This is a single family. This thing is like an estate. This is so cool. Let's see how is this on an acre? Doesn't tell me how big the lot is, but nearly $100,000 each year over the last 2 years, turnkey, fully functioning and furnished short-term rental with no equity. Now, this is something you could wholesale to an investor. This could be pretty solid as a wholesale deal. It's in fully renovated condition. It's got lots of this deserty character. It's got a ping pong table. It's got the shuffleboard, and they've got the poker table here. And would this person give you the house? Oh yeah, they would. Look at this. This guy has a lien on the property for it's no, it's not a lien, it's a solar. He has solar panels. Solar panels is a lien, but it's not a negative lien. So this guy's asking 739. He owes 704. Let's say the realtor cut him a big discount on the 739, and somebody comes along with a 720 offer, and the realtor's only taking 3%, which means that there's no incentive for a buyer's agent to come to the table, because usually a 6% listing agreement covers buyer's agent commission and seller's agent, and part of that commission acts as an incentive for a buyer's agent to bring their client to the table. So without any commission for the buyer's agent, there's less incentive for another buyer to come to the table and make that offer. But let's just say that in this scenario, they're only taking 3% because they know he's low equity. Doesn't matter. You're still underwater. So at your asking price, at a reasonable offer of 720, if you owe 704 and they're only taking 3%, hell, let's call it 2%. You make 1K on the sale. So this guy, in reality, it could be a 5% listing agreement, and they could give him asking price, and man, he's losing $2,000 on the sale at his asking price. So this is a dude who, I mean, what type of loan is it? New conventional. So not an assumable type of loan. Sometimes assumable. Sometimes these are private companies, and sometimes they'll let you assume it. I won't say that's definitively not assumable. They'd have to call the mortgage company and ask if they'd let somebody assume the loan. They might. It's possible. It's not super likely, but it's definitely possible. But yeah, this guy's in trouble, man. This guy needs help. You could definitely call this person and ask your guy if this is what he's looking for. It's a 700K house. It took me a couple minutes to find it. No, no. No, if your buyer's a shady asshole, yeah, I would be careful about that. But dude, if you have a buyer and you're essentially acting as their unlicensed realtor, just their deal finder, and you send them a deal and they're like, I'm poaching that, I'm taking that. Yeah, God, I mean, I guess that could happen, but I don't run into that too often if I have a decent rapport with the guy. Um, I would say you could send him the address and say, "Hey, I'm thinking about locking this up for you. What's the max down payment you'd put on something like this?" Dude, maybe he says 50 grand. Maybe he says 50 grand, and maybe you call the seller and negotiate 10K towards the agent commission. You make yourself a $40,000 assignment fee off of a damn phone call. So I know I wouldn't say that, because the guy, I mean, we just went through so many nuances of getting this done. No chance bro knows all this stuff. No way. There's, no chance that he actually knows how to close one of these deals with the title company, knows how to do the contract for this, knows how to pitch to the realtor, how to put the filters in place to find an opportunity like this. So, most people have no idea how to do something like this. And I wouldn't say you should shy away from showing your potential buyer a deal before they actually acquire it. Um, the mortgage broker, and probably not the PSA, probably just the idea for them to talk over. So when I talk about this initially with a seller, have you listened to my phone call recordings in here? I think I have like 10 or so pitches of me getting sellers to agree to this offer. I might have a super recent one too that will help you out. So if I go to, let me just check really quickly to see if I have this for you here. So phone call recordings, go here. Yep, check this out. This is a seller agreeing to not only give me their house for $0 down. This is the 10th. So what is today, the 15th? Yeah, this is 5 days ago. I got this seller to agree to let me take over their debt. And I got this seller to let me to pay the closing costs. So this is fully free. I'm going to drop this in the chat for you. This is everything that I presented the seller with on the initial call. So let me drop this in the chat. Oh no, does that not allow me to? Well, I'll tell you what. I'm going to post this on the school page. So here's me getting a seller to agree to down and they pay closing costs. And then I'm going to drop this in the chat. So this probably happens to me every week. I've been being real. I mean, Valeria, I think I'm saying that right. She's in our other program, Hold My Hand Wholesale. You know, she could definitely attest. Like this is something that happens weekly. Like we have this happen so frequently. Oh, sorry about that. I don't know what that was, but yeah, when you're initially approaching the seller, my conversation kind of goes like this. First thing I ask them is, so why not list this on the MLS? You know, if I'm talking to an off-market seller, let's say it's a failed listing and they took it off the market because they weren't going to make any money on the sale. One of my first approaches is, so this looks like a beautiful property. Why not just list this thing on the MLS? And the reason I'm saying that is because I want them to realize there's no equity. So we want to discuss the no equity up front. Why not list this thing on the MLS? And then they might say, oh, you know, we considered that. And I'm like, well, it could be a really good idea. You know, maybe we do want to do that. And I kind of encourage them at first. And then I look in the area and I'm like, oh man, looks like these houses are selling for 700. What did you say you owed on your mortgage? 704. Oh, wow. And then what are realtors charging nowadays? 5%, 6%. Your friend told you 6%. Okay. So you're saying you list for 704, but somebody might make you an offer of 680, which is still a good offer. And then 6% comes out of the 680. Oh shit. So you know, if you sold this property 680K less 6%, damn, you walk with 650 and you owe 704. So you're telling me you got to bring, and I'm kind of like discovering this with them, even though I already knew this, discovering it with them. Oh wow, you're telling me you got to bring 54K to the table to sell this? Man. Okay. So how can I help you? Well, I don't really know what to do. I'm not really sure. You've just anchored them. Your anchor is minus $54,000 to sell this property. If you owe 704 and they offer you 680,000 and 6% goes to the realtor, right? So you've just anchored them at negative $54,000. Now your offer of, well, why don't you pay the closing costs, which is only negative 6K, cost 6K to do one of these deals from Gold Key TC and the title company and the attorney that closes this deal. Well, we could probably just have you come out of pocket 6K instead of 50K if I just took over your debt on this property. So now you've kind of given them that anchor of minus 50,000 and now coming in to save the day with, hey, what if it's only $6,000? So I would say more important than the things and resources that you give them to do this, I would say your pitch and your approach and illustrating how much they lose and then the service that you can provide for them. Now, a couple common resources that I do give to them, one, the mortgage broker. And hey, the mortgage broker is so well versed on this that he can explain the trust, what type of trust it is, how it works, how their credit score looks after that, everything. He is used to working with members of my program. He knows the script. You don't have to explain shit to him. He knows everything. So and also the other thing is he's a very comforting and charismatic individual. When you hop on the phone with him, you feel his warm embrace, right? That's not the best way to put it, but you know, he's just one of those people that just makes you feel really, really good talking to him. So that's one resource that I might give them. Another resource I might give them is a seller I've already done this with. Now, I have done this from Texas to Oregon to Washington to DC to Florida to Georgia. I own these all over the United States. And chances are, if you need a seller who's already done this type of deal to talk to your seller about what that looks like or your realtor, offer it and I can probably find it for you because even if I don't own in that state, I've probably wholesaled in that state. I've done mortgage takeovers in Connecticut. I've done them in Rochester, Oregon. I did one in Big Bear, California, all over Texas, all over Florida, all over Georgia. I might actually own one. So in this state, because I've got 23 of these. So I would say that the only resource is Andrew, the mortgage broker. And then I would probably say, tell them that you could probably connect him with a seller who's done this, and then just hit me up on my next oh, my sound went off on Instagram, and then hit me up on my next live call that I do and say, hey, I need a seller who's done this with me in Georgia. Great. I've got 2 of these in Georgia or Tennessee or Indiana or Pennsylvania. I've done them all over. And then that will also provide them a little bit of comfort talking to somebody who's already been through this scenario with them. Hopefully that makes sense. Yeah. Yeah. So, Super easy to find these guys. Just looked in Joshua Tree. Oh my God. It's insane how many people need this solution. Like look at this guy. This guy owes 800 and he's asking 643. You know what probably happened here? The crazy ego of property value from LA probably trickled down here, and people are buying properties for 800,000, and it's just not worth that. It's just not worth $800,000. And now we could offer to take over there. What an interesting property. It's like a little desert castle thing. But yeah, you know, I think this is super, super attainable, kind of illustrated by that call I just posted in school and the calls that I have on a weekly basis. And I would say don't forget the loan assumption, guys, because what I do want to acknowledge about this that makes it not so perfect, because I have to acknowledge the downside, is how many people want to sell their property and hold the mortgage in their name? How many people want to do that? Not an immense amount of people, not a crazy amount of people. And I would say that the assumption is the solution to that. The loan assumption that you guys could offer is the perfect solution to that. You don't have to hold the mortgage. Now there's no balloon on the deal. You own this thing indefinitely. And it's not that bad to assume a loan. It really isn't. If your DTI is okay, it's not that bad. And now there's no explaining to do. Hey, let me take over your debt. Well, is this one of those subject to offers? No, I'll assume your loan. So guys, you know, I know, but I know there's kind of a scenario A and a scenario B. Scenario A is you don't do the loan assumption thing, and you call and you call and you call and you call until you get one of these properties to take over the debt, and it's no qualification, no credit check, $0 down. It happens, but you're probably in for about 40 different outreaches, or one outreach. And I'm serious when I say one. There is no convincing needed on a loan assumption. One outreach is, let me take over your debt. I'll put my name on your mortgage. It's out of your name. It's off your credit score. It's on my credit score instead. So, you know, you kind of weigh your options here. What's another way to get these deals? Well, another way to get these deals, guys, is Facebook. Facebook is an insane way to find these opportunities. If you go to a Facebook group and you search creative finance, and honestly, the subject to group with Pace Morby, sub 2, owner finance, real estate businesses. Let's look for a big one here. 23K, creative finance, 23K is probably the best one. So I'm going to click on this. Dude, this is a subject to community, and they only post subject to deals here. So entry fee, 95K. Bad deal, will not sell. Posted 5 minutes ago. Let's keep looking. Sub 2, these are already under contract. Entry fee, 15K. Look at this, 15K, dude. How cool. We're getting lower. Look at this. Sub 2 deal available, 3.25% FHA, 1,200 PITI, cash flows $300, no equity. You can, look at this, 26 comments. Everybody wants that. End buyer, DM details. You can also wholesale in groups like this. So I can't believe I didn't tell you guys about this stuff, but the subject to community with Pace Morby on Facebook is fully free. I think it has 200,000 members in it. And you know what people do in there? Wholesalers post deals for $0 down all day long. They've already done the legwork for you, but what do they want? They want a little bit of money. So now we have 3 options. $0 down, assuming the loan. 40 calls, get it for $0 down yourself, no credit check. Or wholesaler does the work for you. Now you're putting 5 or 10K down, right? So you can go directly to the source. You can buy the groceries. What do I mean by buying the groceries? Well, a farmer sends the groceries to a grocery store, and the grocery store upcharges you for the groceries because they've already done the work to get the groceries from the farmer, right? So your wholesalers are essentially the grocery stores where you can just buy these things without doing any work. But yeah, you spend a little bit of money. And then you can also negotiate with these people. It's not definitively that much down. This guy's had this deal posted since July 23rd and only has 3 comments. People are saying one day, right? What you could do is you could say, hey, I will give you 10K down. I bet this guy's looking for a 10K fee or a 15K fee. Maybe he has it for $0 down, and you could offer him 5K down. And if nobody else has a better offer, you just got that house for 5K down with a 5% interest rate and $800 a month in payments, right? So other people will do the legwork for you, right? So if I look through here, I mean, maybe I can find one with a really, really low down payment. Entry 11K. Do you think you could get it for 7K? Yeah, I bet you could. Closing costs are covered by the seller in this scenario. 11K down. So you negotiate with this guy. You now have this house for 7K down. No negotiating needed to do with the seller, no explaining. They've already agreed to the terms. And look how many there are. Isn't it insane how many are posted? 5K down right here. Look at this. 5K down to own this property. And if this is 5K down, do you think you could get it for 2K down or 3K down if nobody else wants it? Yes, you could. Yes, you could. And I'll let you know, this is the smaller group. This is the smaller group for this. The bigger group, even more prevalent. So it's just this solves the housing crisis, guys. I know we only got 67 members in this community, but this is a big deal. This legitimately solves the housing crisis. You know, to know that you don't have to jump through the hoops of qualification or spend the down payment, and you can get an interest rate that no longer exists anymore at 3%, not on your DTI. You could buy this thing if you're in a foreclosure. You could buy this thing with Chapter 7 bankruptcy. You could buy this thing from prison. It doesn't matter who you are. Honestly, you know what else I'll say, which I probably shouldn't say? Kids can be given trusts. If you're 15 years old and you have 5K, you could buy a trust. There's a restriction on kids getting mortgages, but could a kid buy a trust? Yeah. Parent, has anybody here ever met a trust fund kid? We know anybody in high school who is a trust fund kid, right? You could be 5 years old and you could buy one of these, guys. If you happen to have 5K at 5 years old, you could do it. Nobody's going to prevent you from buying a trust at a young age. So yeah, you've got your multiple strategies. The only thing that we haven't actually covered is the off-market stuff. And the off-market stuff is interesting. The off-market stuff is it's going to take a lot of legwork, but it can be a very easily attainable $0 down house because these sellers are failed listings. So imagine you had your house for sale and it's low equity, and then you took your property off the market because you realized you weren't going to make any money on the sale. Well, imagine you catch that seller at the right time. Hey, I saw you took it off the market. You were still for sale. You know, you were no longer for sale. Now that the realtor's out of the way, could I just step into your shoes on the mortgage? And now you don't have to negotiate a realtor fee, which is often a hurdle that you'll run into when you're doing on market. However, it is important to note that realtors take decreased fee on market all the time, and the sellers are sometimes okay paying those. The trade-off with on market versus off market is now you're relying on skip tracing, and skip tracing is not always super accurate. And when you call them, it may be a disconnected line. Maybe they don't pick up the phone. Maybe they don't want to sell. But if you happen to catch the right person at the right time through just calling and calling, it's a much easier path because now there's no realtor in the picture. Powerful stuff, guys. Any questions? I'm excited, man. I get worked up even after all this time. I get super excited because I'm like, man, I could make money with this. I could buy my dream house with this. I could help other people make money with this. And you just have a tool belt that so few real estate investors have, that has ultimately allowed me to acquire a huge portfolio. Sure. Yeah. So assuming the loan is putting your name on the loan, subject to is I hold the loan in my name and I transfer title to somebody else. So here's a nice example of that. Um, let's say that you win the lottery, Valeria, you win the lottery and you buy a $1 million property, and you get married and your partner is not able to afford the $1 million property. You could add them onto the ownership of your property. You could add them to the title, or you could transfer the title to them, even if the mortgage is in your name. You could do it. And he didn't qualify for that, or they didn't, he, she, whoever it may be, didn't qualify for that mortgage. And you've transferred the title to them or added them onto the ownership while your name is on the mortgage. Happens all the time when a spouse is unable to afford their partner's mortgage, right? Traditionally, one person makes the income, one person takes care of the property or the kids or whatever it may be. Well, that person may be on the ownership of that property, but perhaps they didn't have the credit score or income to qualify for that mortgage. So that a sub two deal is selling a property subject to the existing mortgage. Kind of the same thing with the trust acquisition agreement, but just a slightly different process and a little bit more protection. You can think of it as, I gave you my house, but I'm holding the mortgage in my name, right? There's no qualification for that. Whereas an assumption is an assumption is a standard thing. A subject to is kind of a creative thing. An assumption means your name actually goes on that mortgage and you actually have to qualify for that mortgage and the seller is fully out of the picture, no ties to the property whatsoever. Does that make sense? On a subject to deal, every time, absolutely, they're keeping the same payments. On an assumption, it may be it's possible that the rate goes up, but not guaranteed. Oftentimes it stays the same. And an assumption, I'd say 8 times out of 10, the rate stays the same. However, sometimes they say, "Hey, you're assuming this mortgage, your rate's gonna go up a little bit." But still, for the most time, for the most part, mortgage rate is going to stay the same in an assumption. The only difference is you have to do a credit check on that and show income statements and you ultimately have to be a W-2 of somebody. So if any of you guys have a W-2 job, you could probably qualify to assume a mortgage. They just wanna see consistent income. Yeah, if you're not a veteran, no problem, no problem. Or you could do the mortgage takeover. Um, I I have many, many VA loans. They're not in my name, they're in other people's names, and some of them don't have balloons on them. Some of them were just okay using up that portion of their entitlement forever, knowing that they could probably not forever, until it's paid off, which is, mortgages are 30 years in the United States, so maybe another 25 years until it's paid off, and some people are just okay waiting that 25 years because their situation's hard enough, but it also doesn't fully limit them from getting a VA loan, as we talked about, $765,000 on average. Well, if you owe 300K on your current VA loan, you can totally get another VA loan even for a more expensive price. But yeah, we have about 170 viewers outside of the program right now, guys. If you're curious about what's going on, this is, not Hold My Hand Wholesale. This is American Dream Project, and it has a focus on acquiring properties through taking over debt for $0 down to live in rather than to invest in, but it's cool because there's a dual purpose. It could be investing or it could be living in, or it could be wholesaling. So there's multiple different, applications for this strategy. But, Joshua, it looks like you had a question. Yeah. Yeah, let me paste this link for somebody, American Dream. There it is. So as far as the title process, I did find a thread of title for a deal, so check this out. We were trying to find one of these earlier. But, this is working with Gold Key. So do you see this is, "Hi, I'm Clarissa from Gold Key, Director of Transaction Coordination. Clarissa is a team member of mine." And look how many emails there were back and forth. 75. And one thing you'll notice, this is the escrow officer, this is Clarissa, this is another escrow officer. Look at all these conversations. Isn't this interesting? I'm not responding in any of these. Look at this. I'll expand the whole thread. This is Gold Key doing their job for me. Can you see my screen right now? So when you when you close a mortgage takeover, really any type of deal with Gold Key TC, because they also just handle normal transactions like retail transactions, you never have to do anything. They do the entire process for you. That's the job of a transaction coordinator. I wouldn't actually know what goes into closing a deal. Essentially, the title work tries their best to do their job, but they always mess up somewhere somehow, especially in a creative finance transaction. And a company like Gold Key TC does all of the nitpicky things necessary to close one of these deals. So your entire role in the closing process is pitch the offer, send it to Gold Key TC or a similar transaction coordinator. I like Gold Key TC because they're well versed in creative finance, and I own the company, so I've prepped them on everything that we're supposed to be doing. But they closed 9 transactions yesterday. Lexi, the my co-owner of this, we showed in Hold My Hand Wholesale 9 transactions in a single day. So super super well versed on this, creative finance and cash. And then I'm happy to film content surrounding the closing process, but really what it is it's a waiting game. You got a contact, you call them and say, "Hey, how long till close? What are we waiting for?" "Well, we're waiting for the lender to do this." And, we could open any of these emails and you can see that there's just like, just wanted to double check my understanding of the water bill. God, I don't know anything about the water bill and what's going on there. This is just them doing the job for us, and that's ultimately a $950 fee that the buyer usually pays to get this thing closed, not the actual or the seller of the property. You don't necessarily have to pay that fee. Yeah, I would learn how to identify these quickly. So what market are you looking for a primary residence to live in, or are you more so wanting to do wholesale or investing? So as far as making money goes, I would say that 80% of my deals for the checks that we showed earlier, those are cash deals. So I would say the best way to understand how to make money in real estate without actually spending money is learning how to wholesale properties with cash transactions. Um, I can definitely talk about that in here. I'm happy to talk about that in here and show you guys how to make money with that. You can also make money by wholesaling creative finance deals. So I would say if your main goal is to make money, Hold My Hand Wholesale might be a better spot for you because this is largely about taking over debt to live in, but you can also make money with this stuff as well. I just think Hold My Hand Wholesale is a more comprehensive understanding of that. So what I would say is if you're brand new and you want to learn the mortgage takeover side of things, which is a great strategy to make money, I would learn how to identify these first. So I'd go on PropStream, I'd figure out these filters. So I'm going to drop a link to PropStream in the chat for you right now. Let me go ahead and grab it. Sorry, just a moment here. Come on, phone, stop freezing, please. So I'd learn how to put your filters into PropStream. Here is your PropStream 1 week free trial. And I would just I would learn how to find properties that are in, oh, come on, copy and paste for me. Sorry, copy and paste is not working right now. Come on. Maybe I can find it in my notes tab. Notes. Here's PropStream right here. There we go. And then I will put that in the chat. So there's a 1 week free trial at the PropStream. I would learn how to put in your filters, and I'd learn how to identify properties like this. So the filters you're using are really simple. 1, active on the MLS. 2, 20% equity. And you can do 10 to 30%. We'll say 10 to 30%, because sometimes 30% can still uncover people that are really low equity, because it's about value, not list price. And then a third optional filter, optional interest rate filter on mortgage app. So I'd put in these 3 filters into PropStream, and I'd learn how to identify opportunities like this. But I'd also note that you can grab opportunities off of Facebook groups like this one right here, sub to everything. And you can, and what you can do is you can also wholesale these people's active deals. So let's say you have a buyer who's looking for something somewhere like Michael does. Great. Somebody probably already has something under contract, and you can scoop that thing up right here, right there, without actually doing any negotiation, and wholesale somebody else's wholesale deal using a joint venture contract. So that's another good way to make money. You can get a deal that's already under contract posted, and then you could post it in a different group and find a buyer of your own and make money off of it like that. But I would first learn how to identify low equity deals, and then yes, I'd go through the rest of the courses. Absolutely. These groups are definitely not something you want to sleep on. One other thing I'll let you know is you could sub 2 cars. You could sub 2 cars. Car subject to is really common. My business partner almost did it. He seller financed a motorcycle for $0 down. And if you want to do sub 2 cars, look at this. There are car groups. Look at this, sub 2 cars and trucks. And what's interesting about subject 2 cars and trucks, and I don't think they all look like this, they're usually newer cars because low equity cars are usually new. These are usually paid off. They don't actually stack a down payment. So the cars are all $0 down. The way that you wholesale a car and make money wholesaling a car is with a wrap. And what a wrap is let's say the car has a 6 or 7% interest rate on it. You might wrap it, that the wholesaler might wrap a 9% rate, and the underlying car payment would be, let's say the underlying car payment is normally $900 a month. The car wholesaler, which are really, really common actually, is going to charge you $1,400 a month. And rather than stacking assignment fees, they're going to stack passive income from subject to in cars, if that makes sense. So these individuals, they don't want down payments to take over the debt. They want increased monthly payments to take over a car. So if you guys have really bad credit and you can't afford a car because of your credit score, no worries. If you can afford the monthly payment, you could join one of these car sub 2 groups, because I'm going to be so real with you. I don't know where the hell you find a car to sub 2. I don't know what list you're pulling. I don't know who you're calling. I've never done it, but I do know that you could join one of these groups and buy a wholesale deal and negotiate with them to the point where your payment is maybe only $200 higher than the actual car payment, and the wholesaler just gets that $200 of monthly income, and then you own a car for $0 out of your pocket and no credit score, and there's still a loan on the car in somebody else's name. So pretty cool stuff there. This is not just houses. You can actually do this with vehicles, and you can seller finance vehicles. And yes, these groups are on Facebook. We got some people in the chat. It's crazy what you can do with this, guys. There's so many awesome strategies to utilize. Anyways, these are automatically recorded. So, if you missed the beginning of it or you had to head out early, these are recorded and these things are posted on the school group, and you can watch it at any time. But yeah, that's I still have more time if you want me to sit here more. I think we've been live for about an hour 40. But if there's any questions you guys have at this time, just let me know, and I'll try to answer them to the best of my ability. Hey, sure. When you say rentals, are you referring to rentals purchased via mortgage takeover or just rentals in general? Let me just answer this really quickly, and then I'll tell you. School.com/American Dream. Just in case it's not showing up, guys. I've been getting restricted on TikTok and Instagram lately, so it's possible that there's no link to join, but there's the link. So process for underwriting a rental property. So if we're not using creative finance, and you said rentals in general or rentals just with creative finance? Great question. So we are only selling to 2 groups of buyers. We're only selling to 2 groups of buyers. Let me see if I can join this other group really quickly. So the 2 groups of buyers are retail buyers and rental buyers. We're not selling to any fix and flip buyers. Now, when we're looking at a deal like, let's see if we can find one like this one right here, 4% interest rate in Converse, Texas, right? The PITI is $1,700. The rent is $1,850. None of these cash flows rentals. Even if you think, oh, well, it makes $100, nah, because you got management, right? And look at this. This guy did the loan modification. Look at that. He did the loan modification that we talked about. He had them put the 20K on the back end that we already talked about today. So that's really cool. And now he's able to charge 15K when normally it was more than 15K just to buy it as is. So he actually executed that strategy that we talked about. But when oh my God, this guy's a member of Hold My Hand Wholesale. I know who this guy is, but essentially mortgage takeovers that are above the price point of probably 150 to 200K and rentals above the price point of 150 to 200K, unless they are multifamilies, they don't cash flow. So every single family above 200K, no cash flow. It's almost universal. And the reason I say that is because what does a 200K house rent out for? 1,400 to 2,000 generally, it's a range. What is the mortgage on a 200K house? 1,400 to 1,800. So there's no cash flow in price points above 200K unless that's a multifamily like a quadplex. So when I think about rental properties, and this is beyond just mortgage takeovers, the only question I have for myself is how much money comes out? How much money comes out of a property? What is your mortgage payment on that property? So let's run a hypothetical example. Let's go to Phoenix, Arizona, and let's filter for just multifamily so that I can really explain what this means. How can I answer off the bat if this is a bad rental or good rental? Does anybody know? What do we think? Bad rental, good rental? Without knowing anything about it, just at a glance, how could we possibly know? Well, it's a bad rental. This is a terrible rental property. Why? It's not about the property and it's not about the location. It's actually about interest rates and the price of this property right now. And this is part of the problem with the United States. Housing values have gotten so high that real estate is kind of not working super well as rentals. Like, because the foundation of real estate in previous years is if I buy a property, my mortgage is below what the house rents out for, and that's how I can make my money. That's not really the case anymore, unless we're looking in Ohio, Michigan, Georgia, Texas, barely even Texas anymore. Texas hanging on by a thread. There's like one or two areas there, like Brownsville, Texas. Who the hell wants to live in Brownsville? Very rough area. But there's only a couple areas that are still cash flowing. I can look at this deal and instantaneously say bad rental property. Why? Well, can you guys guess how much each unit will rent out for? I think you know. I mean, it's not a super nice place. How much do you think each unit will rent out for in this property? It looks rough, doesn't it? Not great living, huh? I bet we all live in better conditions than this. This is a rough place to live. So what do we think? $900 a month? $700 a month, right? Well, actually, this is a perfect justification for creative finance. As a duplex, this thing will probably bring in $1,400 per month, right? Probably will bring in $1,400 per month. It says excellent investment opportunity. And good news, it's a fourplex. It still doesn't work. $700 a month times 4 is $2,800, right? They say excellent investment opportunity, but let's find out. Is it a really good opportunity or are they just delusional? Well, they're just delusional. If I buy this for their price, $400,000, how much do I have to put down with the bank? 80K, right? There's no two ways around it. I have to put down 80K. Really, it's 90K with closing costs. Really, 95K with closing costs. Well, this is the monthly payment. And then what are taxes and insurance? About $400 a month. So your monthly payment is $2,528, and you're bringing in $2,800. But remember, 20% is for rental expenses. So really, you're bringing in 22. Rental expenses are management, vacancy, repairs, utilities. So you're looking at 2,200 coming in, and you're looking at 2,500 coming out with taxes and insurance. So when I'm underwriting rental properties, I can look at I can look at this property and instantaneously say, bad deal. Bad deal. Why? Well, everything's a bad deal above 400K unless it's a crazy cash flowing property, like just something absolutely ridiculous. Like a student housing facility that brings in 15K a month for 700,000. That exists. We have one of those under contract right now in Albany or in New York. We looked at it yesterday. Some kid got it under contract. So almost every single rental opportunity above $100,000 doesn't work anymore unless you use creative finance. So how would I tackle a deal like this if I wanted to wholesale it? Well, I probably couldn't wholesale it because it looks like a prison. And generally speaking, buyers don't want to buy things that look like a prison. But what I would say is this: hey, I'm your buyer at 400K. I'm ready to go. The realtor says, great news. Awesome. I'm happy to work with you. And I say, how do I get a loan on this, by the way? And they say, oh, easy. I'll walk you through the process. And I say, well, it's an investment loan because you got tenants in here. And they say, yeah, investment loan. I can get you that. And I say, okay, investment loans are called DSCR loans. DSCR. What does DSCR stand for? Debt service. What does debt service mean? Mortgage. Mortgage coverage ratio. Debt service coverage ratio. DSCR, which means you can get the loan if your mortgage is covered by the rent. Is the mortgage covered by the rent here? No. So if you apply for the loan, will you get the loan? No. Is that about your credit score? No. It is a DSCR loan. Is it about the income of the property? So when the realtors don't really know why houses sell. They just think, oh, it'll sell somehow, some way. But the reality is, if this property is occupied, which the personal possessions that we're seeing here would suggest that it is. Sorry about that, guys. Somebody just joined. The personal possessions that we're seeing here kind of illustrate that this is a rental property. I don't imagine that this is staging. I don't think they decided to stage it with the Spider-Man bike. So, this is not something anybody could get a loan for unless you're living in the property. Yeah, you could get a loan to live in it, but to be honest, FHA loans, they only qualify if it's in good condition. And this thing looks like shit. This thing looks like a code violation nightmare. I wouldn't touch this with a 10-foot pole. So oh my God, this is terrible. So if you were to try to buy this, it wouldn't qualify for an investment loan because of the cash flow, and it wouldn't qualify for an FHA loan because of the condition. The only play for this investment-wise is seller financing, but even then, I don't want to seller finance this prison-looking ass property. So really, the only play is tear this shit down, build something on it because it's in a good location. It's in Phoenix. Build a high density multifamily on this property. So I look at something like this and I think to myself, instantaneously, I know it's a bad rental and it's not about the condition, it's about the price point. Alternatively, oh my God, y'all are joining left and right. We got to turn that off. I don't know how to turn that off, but alternatively, let's say we're in Detroit, Michigan. Is this a good rental? Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That's a damn good rental. Why is this a damn good rental? Well, let's run through it. This property, assuming good condition, let's be real. It has to be in good condition. But does it look like it's in good condition? Yeah. It's good enough. Is this a good rental property? How can I know without doing my underwriting that you refer to? I don't need to underwrite, and I'm not the Rain Man. I promise. I'm not doing all of this crazy math in my head to know, oh, good rental property. I know just based on pattern recognition that an $84,000 property correlates to a mortgage of about $800 a month. And I know that in Detroit, or really almost anywhere in the United States that's a normal market, a 2-bed, 1-bath unit, because this is a duplex, meaning that it's made of 2 units. And then if you divide this, it has to be a 2-1 and a 1-1, right? Because 3 beds, 2 baths. 2 beds on one side, 1 bed's on the other side. That makes up the 3. And then you have 1 bathroom and 1 bathroom on each one. So you're looking at a duplex, 2 beds on one side, 1 bed on the other side, 1 bed on one side, 1 bed on the other side. Add those together, 3 bed, 2 bath. That's the layout of this property. This will probably bring in about $1,800 a month. You're probably looking at $1,000 or $1,100 on the 2-1, and then you're looking at $700 to $800 on the 1-1. Now, how much is the mortgage on this? Well, let's run it through the calculator. So let's say you get this for 75 because discounts are always attainable in the market that we're in. 15,000 down. Damn, that's a fire mortgage payment right there. Oh shit. Oh my God. That's an awesome mortgage payment right there. It's $400 a month. Add your taxes and insurance. Let's see taxes and insurance on this bad boy. They are looking like $262 and $28. Is home insurance really $28 per month? Absolutely the fuck not. No. It's probably closer to $75 to $100. But this is probably right for taxes. So add another $360 to the monthly payment. As I said, approximately $800, $760, right? So you pay $760 on this thing. I didn't do some crazy mental math in my head. I just knew, like, okay, yeah, a mortgage on $800 on an $80K house or $75K house is probably around $800, and this thing will rent out for $1,700, $1,800. So when I think about this, the reason that this is a good rental is, well, I compare it to other investment vehicles. $1,800 comes in. What do we take off the top, guys, on a rental figure? You remember? 20%. That's for vacancy. That's for management. That's for repairs. That's for utilities. So 1,800 multiplied by 0.8. Well, we already had that in. Is 1,440. Then I'm going to subtract my 399. Then I'm going to subtract my taxes of 260 and my insurance of 100. So, and it was actually 75 for insurance. So I'm going to add my 25 back. So this is how much that property would make you per month after a mortgage on it, right? This is how much this property would make per year. We do not measure real estate investments on a monthly basis. We can't. It's too unpredictable. We have to measure real estate and cash on cash in general as a yearly investment. This is how much you make per year. Now, how much did it cost you to buy this? Oh shit, 15 plus 10, 25. You just bought this property for 25K and you get 8K back year one. What return is that? 33%. And what does the stock market give you in the past year? Anybody know? I'm not a stock guy, so I don't really know. 10 to 13. Maybe one of you is a stock person and knows. I think 10 to 13%, and I think on average 9 to 10% across large bundles like the NASDAQ and S&P. So you're probably looking at 9 to 10% with the stock market. Why? Because when you give the stock market their money, they're actually reinvesting that elsewhere and giving you the return that they can give you. This is getting your own return on investment for 34% of your money back. This 3.5x is what the stock market will give you. Unbelievable return on investment. And I looked at it and I said, instantaneously, this is a good rental property. I know it's a good rental property, just like that. And that just comes down to the mortgage. That literally just comes down to the mortgage. Now, what could be wrong with this rental property? What's the underwriting that I'm not telling you about? This roof looks old. This bathroom looks old. This light looks gross. Those are the only other parts of underwriting for a rental property that I'm not talking to you about right now, if that makes sense. So you got to think about this. I just gave you a lot of information overload. When you're looking at a rental property, only two things matter. How much money comes out of my bank account per month? How do we figure that out? Well, Zillow tells you taxes and insurance, and I've got a mortgage calculator for you right here, but there's also a million of them online, but I'll drop this one in the chat for you. You'll have to click File, Make a Copy to use this, because this is the original copy. And then you guys can use that. So all you think about on a rental property is, how much do I have to spend to get into this property? And the answer is 20% down normally, 10K for closing costs with the loan. How much comes out of my bank? And then if I subtract all expenses, what's my cash on cash return? Now, the formula that I just did in front of you guys a number of times, let's go ahead and reiterate that. Rent multiplied by 0.8 minus PITI times 12 divided by total cost of buying using 10K for closing costs and 20% of purchase as a down payment. And that's it. That's how you calculate your cash on cash return. In order for you or an investor to be interested, I suggest 20% or higher. So there's not too many nuances to it. In fact, it's pretty simple. What comes in, what comes out. Use this formula to figure it out. 20% should be your return, but really 33% is attainable if you find the right deal. And honestly, whether or not something's a good rental property, I can look and say good deal, bad deal, good deal, bad deal, good deal, bad deal without any underwriting whatsoever. And I'm really not some special savant who can just figure this out. In reality, I'm just looking at the price point and saying, what could this possibly cost? What could it possibly bring in based on the type of property it is? Legacy, no, this is live right now. We're live on School answering questions about how to buy houses for free and real estate in general. I'll give you the link. But yeah, any questions about that? Pretty straightforward stuff, guys. You know, real estate's pretty simple once you get the hang of it. I would say this: if you're new here, I remember being new. I did my first deal in October of 2021. After about 3 months of studying, I didn't have anything like this though. I was just guessing and checking and hopefully figuring something out. And what it felt like was this: it's like there's a puzzle scattered everywhere, just a big puzzle scattered all over my brain, and I don't understand how creative finance relates to rentals, relates to cash on cash, relates to retail buyers. And it's like, I know what all these things are, but how do they all connect? And as I continue to show up to live stream after live stream after live stream, the puzzle got smaller and more dense and smaller. And then all of a sudden I was like, wait a second, if the property looks like this is who buys it. And if this is who buys it, this is who they're selling it to. And if this is who they're selling it to, this is the price that they need it at. And that means I know I need to offer this price to this seller. And then the understanding started to become deeper. Well, wait a second. The seller is selling it because of this going on in their life right now. And if I say this, that will make them happy. And that will in turn also make this guy happy, because I know if this guy buys it, this is what he's doing with the property. And all of a sudden I saw this just roadmap in my head, and I was like, oh shit, I can look at a property and instantaneously know what to do with it. Obviously there's sides of real estate that I don't really understand, and that's the development side. So I know a bit about development and building property, but that's not my forte. But honestly, fix and flip, rental, retail buyers, I could just see this whole picture in my head as it relates to creative finance and as it relates to cash offers and seller finance as well. And that will happen to you guys. That'll happen to you guys. The only thing you need to do is time. That's the only thing you need to do. Time, listening to this, listening to podcasts. My top 3 real estate podcasts are: 1, my own podcast, Why Aren't You Wholesaling? That's led by the hosts of this community. 2, Wholesale Hotline with my favorite guys, Pace Morby, Brent Daniels, Jamil Damji, and Jerry Norton. 3, I like Flipping Mastery TV, all available on Spotify and Apple Music. And 4, I really love Kong Wholesale to Millions for negotiation tips. These are, so when I was starting, I just immersed myself in these fully. And that is what made that scattered puzzle in my brain of every single different type of deal that you could do just get really, really concise in my head, to the point where I was like, I could approach virtually any property and know how to solve the problem, whether that is a $60K multifamily or a $5 million commercial mixed use property. Learning creative finance is a super rare strategy. So few people have this tool on their tool belt. So I'm glad that you guys are here and learning this stuff. Anyways, that's a 2-hour stream for today. I thank you for the amazing questions, Michael, because those just contributed so much to the stream. I came on here and I'm like, well, shit, if they don't have any questions, I guess I'll just sort of yap about it. But you provided a great direction for me and gave me a lot of things to talk about. So thanks so much for the good questions. And guys, I'll just take a moment. Is there anybody else who's confused about anything that I could answer? All right, I did a decent job. All right. Well, this is recorded, and if you want to revisit this will be on the page here. Thank you all for showing up and taking time out of your Saturday. I know it's midday Saturday. What are we doing learning about real estate? Let's go do something fun in the summer sun. But you were here, so thanks for showing up. I appreciate it. And if you see anybody else in the chat that's struggling, that's like, well, I don't really understand what this is about. I don't know how to do this. This guy's not here to answer my question right now. We'll direct them towards this live stream. Say, dude, you missed the best fully comprehensive breakdown of what it is that we're doing here. Comment in the chat, be active with your fellow members and be like, hey, just go watch this, man. This is going to clear up everything for you, from how to buy these properties to live in, to how to negotiate them, to how to do the contract, to how to do the title work, and then also how to wholesale these properties. And then towards the end, getting into a little bit more general real estate stuff. All right. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye. All right. So yeah, this community here is about creative finance, and we're brand new. We just started. We only have 70 members. Let me check to see. I think it's 69 or 70 members. We only have about 70 members, and this is entirely about stopping renting. So if you missed the beginning of this stream, the last thing I'll leave you with is most of you probably rent. Statistically, most of you rent properties. And if you rent properties, you're flushing 25 to 35 to 40 grand a year down the toilet, depending how much you pay in rent. That could be going towards equity for your family to have a paid off asset. The only hurdle that's standing in your way is you can't qualify for a loan, and maybe you don't have the down payment, but here you don't need that. You don't need that. I'm a seller, a low equity seller for 2 of my properties. I'll take 10K down on one of them for a 2.3% interest rate in Houston, and I'll take $0 down for the other one because I truly am underwater. So if you're like, well, I don't know if I could find that. You found it. You found it. It's me. If you're in the community, I'll give you I'll give you my addresses right now. The one that I'll take $0 down on is 9711 Chelsea Circle in Selma, Texas. And the one that I'll take 10K down on is 13206 Clifton Hill Lane. And that's a 2.3% interest rate. So, it's just, I am a seller who will do this. And there are so many more sellers who will do this with you. And I own so many houses that I've gotten for either 0% interest using seller finance, 2 to 3% interest taking over debt, or $0 down with a 3% interest rate. So it's just a really, really, really cool strategy. And we're teaching y'all how to solve the housing crisis, right? The housing crisis is prices and interest rates have got so high, and more so, minimum wage hasn't raised since 2007 federally, meaning that people can't afford houses. Dog, how could they afford houses? I'm literally on my way to Texas to buy a house because I have 0 options. Well, this is a great option for you. So it's a problem that the median housing price is $450 to $550 in the United States, depending on which source you look at, and that mortgage inherently costs $3,500 per month, and that minimum wage doesn't allow you to buy it anymore. When my grandma bought a house when she was like 30 or 40 years old, she bought it for $38K. Right? It was in San Diego, California. Can you believe that? San Diego, California for $38K? Unbelievable, right? That house is worth $2.5 million right now. You know what her job was when she bought that house for $38K? She's a damn teacher at a community college. In what world can a teacher at a community college buy a house for $38K, which is now worth $2.5 million? That part of the American dream is dead. So what part of the American dream is still alive? Information. We are in the age of information, and you have access to some strategies that used to only be held very close to the heart of elite real estate investors. And now it's being spread across the internet, and you can use it to acquire properties for $0 down, as I have. I'm 25 years old, and at age 23, I had a $7 million real estate portfolio. I'll never have to work off of my rentals alone. And then when you combine other strategies on top of it, you got your cars, you got your boats, you got your toys, you got the fancy dinners, you got the fancy vacations. I mean, 3 weeks ago, I just got back from a vacation in the Philippines. You know what we did? You know what real estate allowed me to do? I rented an entire hotel and their staff for 3 weeks, and I housed my entire 25-person team off of real estate and flipping and rentals. It's insane. The starting point is learning. But 5 years into this shit, oh my God, you're rolling in it. You're rolling in it. And we want to help you get there. So you can do that through the American Dream Project. We call this American Dream Project, school.com/American Dream. Here it is in YouTube. And then for TikTok, school.com/American Dream. All right. So that's a solely creative finance platform for you, and it is available at less than the cost of my Starbucks order. And I will catch you guys on the next one. Thanks so much for hanging out with me for these 2 hours, and hopefully this was valuable to you. See you later, guys. Enjoy.